What a relief it is indeed. Time for the trolley, and grabbing from the drinks trolley as it whizzes past, pushed by Sir David Jacobs. What is it you've selected for us today, Susie?
Well, I've gone for a classic martini today. I would have mine with gin, but obviously you can have vodka. And I would always say stirred, not shaken. But it's a personal choice, whatever you like.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that top tip. Today's confession comes from Hugo. Thank you, Hugo. Simon and the Saintly Collective. My misdemeanor happened a few years ago at a summer music festival. And being a man of a certain age, I needed to visit the toilet after every pint I had consumed.
Okay.
Oh, dear.
Of course, there was a day when I could go for the whole day without using the loo. I once lasted 2 whole days. But those days were now long gone.
Wow, okay.
My brother once went to a music festival and lasted the whole festival without trying hard, as we used to say in our family. But you get to a certain period in your life and you can't, in the words of Beautiful South, you can't hold it all in it.
No, you can't.
So,
trying hard.
I was 5, I think.
Okay.
My parents said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying hard." Anyway, the toilets were in a huge crescent of about 100 blue portaloos, and the queue was really, really long. I joined the back of the queue, obviously, because I'm British, and waited patiently while the whole queue had to listen to 2 guys who thought themselves very, very funny and interesting. I say this because they spoke in such loud voices that the whole queue could hear them as they laughed heartily at themselves. And as we know, loud always equals funny and interesting. They were talking about the festivals that they'd been to over the years, uproarious tales and wild nights, crazy campers, and how everyone had, over the years, found them hilarious. So anyway, they finally got to the front of the queue, but as they were being so funny and amusing themselves, they were so busy being loud they didn't notice that someone was coming out of a loo in the middle of the crescent. I waited a minute and then I started calling, "Oh, there's an empty loo over there, come on." But they were so engrossed in their funny conversation, they didn't hear me. So I thought, well, if nobody else is going, I will. And I walked out of the queue to several murmurs and mutters with everyone now watching, and I strode over to the Portaloo Crescent. This is where my plan got a little sketchy, because having looked away from the door, that I'd seen someone coming out of, it was hard for me to find precisely the right one. I was heading in the general direction, looking for the door that had the green lock to show that it was vacant as opposed to the red lock that would have showed the opposite. Anyway, relief was at hand, because there it was. There's the cubicle. There's the green lock. I got hold of the door and pulled.
Oh, no.
It was stiffer than usual, which was a surprise. So I gave it a good pull, and it did open. And out popped a guy who'd been hanging on to the inside of the door, and he had his pants around his ankles.
Of course.
He swung out as the door swung. Why was he holding? I don't know. He was saying something in a harsh tone, but in the surprise of him shooting out half-dressed, I didn't take in the exact words, but can imagine that they were not particularly kind words. Obviously, I then quickly shut the door, and he swung back in with the door.
Yeah.
Now that the door was closed, I was too ashamed to look up to the queue and just scurried away to find another toilet area and did not hang around to apologise. This is so British. It's exactly what I would have done.
Yeah.
So embarrassed.
Yeah.
Just go and find somewhere else. So, Simon, I was hoping that you and the Gracious Collective could forgive me, as this was a genuine mistake, and I never meant to expose the poor man's privates to the 100 or so people waiting, goggle-eyed in the queue. Moral: don't hang on to the door in a portaloo. I'm still not quite sure why he was hanging on to the door anyway, but maybe it was for support. Maybe he had one, and then as the door opened, and then he's...
Yeah.
Like that. I'm kind of reenacting it. Well, it's like a cuckoo clock. He just kind of popped out. Anyway, Sister Susie, what are you making of this? You're an old festival veteran.
He could have been hanging onto the door out of fear, because if he'd have heard someone trying to open it, maybe he was trying to stop that happening. So maybe he heard that Hugo was on the other side and was just like, "No, I can't. Please don't open the door." Also, like, they're not that thick, portaloos, so you could have just said, "There's someone in here," and then Hugo might not have pulled it so hard and open the door. I don't know, Hugo. I think it's a very tricky situation to be in, and I think everyone's fear when they use a portaloo is that someone's going to open the door, and and do that. And for that, I don't know. Also, I feel really sorry for you that you went for a wee and you didn't get to go for a wee. And
no, you had to go and find somewhere else.
I'm just going to forgive you because it was the noisy boy's fault.
I find it quite stressful, the whole situation, the whole going to the loo thing.
Don't do it. Yeah.
The whole queue and the people annoyed at you. And have you
also,
when you get there, will there be paper? Will there be paper? Who knows?
No, always take your own. Always take your own.
Anyway, brother from another guy.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's the system that's wrong here, isn't it?
The system?
It's the system and the system. The system is very haphazard queuing, isn't it? What's going on there where people are just talking and therefore you miss out on one of the loos becoming vacant? And also, what are these locks like where you can just pull the door and it suddenly opens? That doesn't make sense at all. And for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Oh, right. Well, okay.